is good.
Certainly, God is awesome. Yeah, last year this time, my mom passed in February of last year, at 104 years old in Jamaica.
Oh,
Yes,
I
yes.
better.
And because of the pandemic, everything was shut down. I was unable to get to Jamaica for her homegoing celebration.
I can imagine how you felt.
It was just very hard for us. Just couldn't get there.
Yes, I know. I saw it. Yes.
All right. Well, I'm going to unmute myself. I'm going to mute myself out here and wait for a few moments.
Yes. God bless you, Bishop. God bless you.
Are you here?
Praise God, everybody. Hallelujah. Praise God. I'm seeing and hearing some familiar voices and seeing some familiar faces. The Lord bless you. I welcome you to our Jamaica Pentecostal Union virtual conference, where the objective of this conference is to educate, to empower, and also to clarify the truth about COVID-19 vaccine. And I know that most persons all over the world have many questions and need answers for these questions and many inhibitions in terms of feelings. But we, the Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic, is very pleased to host this conference. So at this time, I welcome you and I bless you. And it's very good that you have joined in just to be educated, just to be empowered. I am Bishop Designate Jeremy McGregor. And at this time, I'm going to ask our Vice Chair, Bishop Eunice from Wholeness Born Again, Manchester, to come and do the prayers and also to bring us greeting. Bishop Eunice.
Praise the Lord, everybody. I just want to extend greetings to everyone present in that all-powerful name of Jesus. So glad to be on this platform this afternoon with such a very important very important topic we discussed, and we just sincerely hope and trust that we'll all will receive a blessing this evening. Would you have some folks muting your mics, please? Thank you. All right, let us pray. Eternal God and Father Jesus, we thank you this evening for your goodness. We thank you for your mercies. We thank you, Lord, for being so very good to us. We thank you even for this platform that we are on this evening. We thank you, God, for technology. We thank you for the knowledge that you have blessed us men with, oh God, that we are able, even during this pandemic, to be able to communicate, oh God, via these means. And we want to thank you also, God, for your blessing on your life. We thank you for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. We thank you, God, for revealing yourselves unto mankind, that even in this pandemic, oh God, you have blessed us, our men, with the knowledge, oh God, to come up with a vaccine that can counteract this disease. Oh God, we want to thank you for all the scientists who have put their minds together, oh God, to achieve this. And even this afternoon on this platform, we will be having, oh God's men telling us, giving us advice, oh God, on this vaccine. We thank you for Sister Denise McFarlane. We thank you for Bishop Dr. Evan Paul and others who are on this afternoon.
Daddy, what's up on our watch, Daddy?
We are praying your divine blessing upon them. And oh God, for those of us who be online, that oh God will give earnest heed and will, oh God, understand clearly what is necessary, because God, even as a church, you call us as leaders. And God, we need to lead from the front. We need to be there to guide others on the right path, oh God, even where this vaccination is concerned. Therefore, God, we pray you bless us in a very special way this evening. We look to you by faith and we say thanks. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my distinct pleasure at this time to present to us is Sister Denise online. Mrs. McFarlane, are you there?
Yes, I am. I'm here, sir.
Okay, great. Good to have you. Good to have you. All right. It's my distinct pleasure this afternoon to, okay, before we come to Sister Denise, our chairman, Major Kenu Chambers, amen, as his name, as his title suggests, Major is an was a army man, army personnel, was serving the army for our country for years. And now he's serving in the army of the Lord. And he's the present chairman of the Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic. So at this time, it's my distinct pleasure to ask Major Canute Chambers to greet us in Jesus' name. Major Chambers.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bishop Nunes. And Major Canute Chambers, as you have been told, and as a chairman of the Jamaica Pentecostal Union at this time, I deem it an honor and certainly a great privilege to greet all my father's children in their respective positions who have all joined us on this platform this afternoon as we deliver the truth about the COVID-19 vaccine. The Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic salutes you as we especially welcome and greet also our trusted, truthful, and faithful men and women of God who will expound on the vaccines for us today. I believe with us as the host of the conference and conversations is Bishop Dr. Evan Nepal, and certainly his team of Professor Trevor Ferguson, Dr. Marcia Graham, and Miss Denise McFarlane, all of whom certainly we owe a very enormous debt of gratitude for availing themselves to debunk the fallacies, the fears, the apprehensions, the controversies, and indeed the conspiracy theories surrounding the COVID-19 vaccine. I believe collectively we have a responsibility
to
educate the people of God in this regard. Sirs, we certainly thank you so much for taking the time to do so. God bless you. Welcome once again to all, and thank you for sharing with us. Bravo Zulu, forward as I welcome back to the chairman of the Jamaica Pentecostal Union, Bishop Evan. God bless you.
Your name. Yes, Denise.
God bless you, Bishop.
Yeah, me
Ian. Are you there?
490 at first online.
Vice Chairman, I hand back to you, sir. Bishop Nunes.
Bishop Nunes is having some amount of difficulty. He's coming on back.
All right, Bishop McGregor, over to you then.
Thank you, sir. Well, we are in an evening that we will learn a lot today, and we will surely be empowered. We have Dr. Professor Trevor Ferguson, and we have Nurse McFarlane, and we also have Dr. Nepal. He's coming on shortly. So I know Mrs. Denise McFarlane is online, and also Professor Trevor Ferguson. So at this time, I'm going to ask Mrs. McFarlane to come in, and also Mr. Dr. Professor Trevor Ferguson. So Mrs. McFarlane, hand over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Bless you, Bishop Designate. And I also want to give my greetings to Bishop Nunes and Major Chambers. It's good to have everyone here this evening. I am so excited that us in Pentecost are really interested in learning more about the disease and the vaccines. Today we're here to talk about the truth about COVID-19 vaccination. And this is vaccination for the novel coronavirus, which started in Wuhan, China, as we know. And we had our first case in Jamaica on March 10. That's 2020, a year that we will never forget. And it was declared a pandemic on March 11. Now, this afternoon, we're going to have our panelists to speak directly about the pandemic and about the importance of the truth, I should say, about vaccination. panel this afternoon, a panel consisting of our own Bishop Dr. Nepal, one of the leading OBGYN in the business nationally, and he's a Pentecostal, we are proud to say. We also have the recently designated Bishop, this probably is speaking prophetically, but Professor Trevor Ferguson of the University of the West Indies. And we also have to speak to us Dr. Marcia Graham, and she is from the Western region. She works with the health department in the Western region. My name is Denise McFarlane. I am an epidemiologist and the public health specialist for the Planning Institute of Jamaica. And so this evening we have a really, really interesting lineup to speak. I want to get right into the mix of things. Dr. Nepal, are you online as yet?
No, no, Mrs.
And if he's
McFarlane,
not, we're going to.
give him a few more minutes.
Okay, we're going to move right ahead with our first speaker. And the first speaker is no stranger to us. We know him, Dr. Professor Trevor Ferguson, and he's employed at the University of the West Indies. He's an epidemiologist and a very experienced scholar and researcher in the field. He also works at the University Hospital of the West Indies, and he is a child of God. He worships at the Bethel United Apostolic 20 South Camp Road. So help me welcome everyone, Dr. Trevor Ferguson, as he takes us on the first leg of the information relating to the COVID-19 vaccinations. Dr. Trevor Ferguson, you are a co-host and you can go straight ahead now, sir, by sharing your screen and starting your presentation.
Season. It could not be that one time because a season is not one day.
I'm seeing your screen, sir, so go right ahead. Probably need to maximize. Great.
So, good evening, everyone. Praise the Lord. It certainly is, have a bit of a noisy background.
Dr. Trevor, hold on. The host.
Dr. Ferguson, if you can hear me, you can go ahead now.
Can we ask the people to mute their mics?
Yes,
disturbing the presentation.
Dr. Ferguson, you're muted. Could you unmute and go ahead, please?
Let's begin again. So, praise the Lord and good evening to everyone. It certainly is a privilege to be on this platform to share with the family of God concerning issues related to this pandemic. Let me take this opportunity just to say thanks to the Jamaica Pentecostal Union for inviting me to share in this presentation. Thanks to Mrs. McFarlane for her introductions, and of course for chairing this meeting, as well as to Bishop Dr. Nepal, and special greetings to our chairperson for the JPUA, Major Canu Chambers, and also the Vice Chair, Bishop Nunes. So good evening, everyone. And without further ado, I will go into a brief presentation looking primarily at historical and epidemiological perspectives as it relates to the coronavirus vaccine. So we will start with what is vaccination. And the Center for Disease Control defines a vaccine as a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting the person from that disease. Now, vaccines are usually given through injections, but can also be administered by other routes, including given as drops in the mouth or sprayed into the nose. Now, how do vaccines work? Our body has an immune system, which is the body's defense against viruses, bacteria, and other foreign entities. The body has special ability to recognize anything that is foreign and to mobilize a system of cells to destroy these foreign entities. Now, there are two types of immunity. There is the innate immunity, which consists of cells within the body, and these will engulf and destroy foreign particles. Additionally, there is acquired or adaptive immunity, in which the body produces special proteins called antibodies that bind to foreign substances and facilitates their destruction. Now, importantly, as it concerns immunity, the body has the capacity to remember foreign entities. So after the first exposure to a virus or bacteria, the body is able to mount an effective immune response and in several situations prevent a second infection. We see this with conditions such as measles or chickenpox, which essentially, if you have it once, you will not get it again. Now, what vaccines do is that they mimic that first infection. So the body is exposed to some component of the virus or bacteria, and the immune system produces antibodies against it. When the body therefore encounters that virus or bacteria again, it already has antibodies and is able to mount an effective immune response. So vaccines have been a very effective tool in public health. And when we look at the history of vaccines, there are some notable success stories. Some conditions have been completely eradicated, while others have been reduced so that there are very few cases each year. Now I'm going to discuss briefly just two of those stories to help to illustrate how vaccines have helped in the past and why vaccines are likely to help in this current pandemic. So we start with the smallpox story. And smallpox is an infectious disease caused by the variola virus. 1 in 3 persons who developed smallpox died, and many of the survivors were left with severe scars or were rendered blind. It is estimated that in the 20th century alone, over 300 million people died from smallpox, which was significantly more than died from World War I and II combined. Fortunately, the last naturally occurring case of smallpox occurred in 1977. How was this accomplished? When we look at the history of vaccination, we recognize that smallpox was one of the first conditions for which a successful vaccine was developed. This was developed way back in 1796, when Edward Jenner, a British physician, found that exposing persons to small quantities of the cowpox virus, which was called vaccinia, which was a similar disease to smallpox affecting cows. And when this cowpox virus vaccine was used, it was able to prevent smallpox in humans. Now, vaccination against smallpox was practiced in developed countries during the 19th and 20th century, but this was not well organized and was very rarely done in developing countries. Now, in 1967, the World Health Organization launched a plan to eradicate smallpox. Now, this was a plan that was comprehensive and involved essentially all the countries of the world. Widespread immunization and surveillance were conducted over several years. And as we mentioned before, the last case of smallpox was recorded 10 years later in 1977. And in 1980, the World Health Organization was able to declare smallpox eradicated. This is the only infectious disease that has achieved this distinction. And this remains among the most notable and profound public health successes in history. So that is smallpox. But we have our own success story right here in Jamaica. And that story is about poliomyelitis. Now, most of us who are old enough will know somebody who have had polio and has suffered paralysis as a result of polio. So polio is a highly infectious viral disease that largely affects children under 5 years of age. This is transmitted mainly through the fecal-oral route, and fortunately, up to 90% of cases have mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. However, some persons develop paralysis, usually in the legs, and this is often permanent. Of the persons who develop paralysis, approximately 5 to 10% die from breathing problems because of weakness in their respiratory muscles. Now, in Jamaica, there were major outbreaks of poliomyelitis in 1954, 1957, 1960, and smaller outbreaks in 1964 and 1982, with numbers ranging from a low of 60 in 1964 and 1982 to 759 in 1954. And the case fatality, that's the proportion of persons who died from the disease, ranged from about 3% up to 12%. Now, apart from those persons who died, many were left paralyzed and, of course, were unable to function in various ways because of this paralysis. Now, Jamaica started its vaccination program against polio in 1957 after the second outbreak, and approximately 81,000 children were vaccinated. In 1960, 11,000 were vaccinated, 189,000 in 1962, and 146,000 in 1964. Unfortunately, the efforts at vaccination were rather sporadic between 1964 and 1982, which of course would have led to the situation where another outbreak occurred in 1982. By then, Jamaica had learned its lesson. So after the 1982 outbreak, there was a massive immunization campaign, which was launched using the oral polio vaccine. And this started on June 3 and targeted children under the age of 30 years, with those between age 0 and 14 be given priority. Now, the first phase of this was completed by the 30th of June. So within 1 month, they had vaccinated 1.4 million persons, or 65% of the total population at that time. Coverage among those 0 to 14 years exceeded 80% in some parishes. And the second dose was given to approximately 641,000 persons in the 0 to 14 age group. Of course, after that vaccination effort and with ongoing vaccination, this was the last we saw of polio in Jamaica. Now, Jamaica's vaccination program has been hailed by the WHO. On the World Health Organization website, there's a document in which Jamaica is used as a case study, showing how checking vaccination status at or during school helps in ensuring an effective immunization program. Below is a quotation from this document, which reports that the expanded program of immunization in Jamaica was established in 1978 with the goal of achieving 95% coverage for nationally recommended vaccines. Due to the strength of its immunization program, Jamaica was able to successfully eliminate poliomyelitis in 1982, measles in 1991, rubella in 2000, and the last case of congenital rubella was recorded in 1998. So Jamaica has been very successful in conducting immunization programs and in eradicating various infectious diseases. Now, just a quick note on the concept of herd immunity. We saw in the last slide that the target was to get 95% coverage for persons who needed vaccination. And this effort to get broad coverage essentially was in an effort to achieve herd immunity. What herd immunity is that there is indirect protection from an infectious disease when a population is immune, either through vaccination or immunity developed through previous infection. What happens is that if most persons in the population are immune, then the virus will not spread even to those who have never been vaccinated or who have never had the disease. In order to achieve herd immunity, one needs to vaccinate somewhere between 50% to 90% of the population, depending on how contagious the particular infectious disease is. So this, of course, is a target in essentially all vaccination programs. So turning to the matter at hand, why do we think, or why should we vaccinate persons for COVID-19? I don't think any of us need to be reminded that we're in the most serious pandemic that the world has faced since the influenza pandemic of 1918. To date, or at least up to yesterday, there were 119 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide, with 2.6 million deaths. And this has affected essentially every country. And we're all very familiar with the effects that it has had on the economy, the restrictions to movement, and the ways in which our lives have changed because of this pandemic. For Jamaica, again, up to yesterday, there were 29,912 confirmed cases and 484 deaths. This gives us a case fatality rate of approximately 1.6%, and the recovery rate was approximately 50%. Of course, this will improve with time. There were 33 patients in critical care, and of course, this has put a major stress on our health system, with several hospitals being completely full and persons at risk of being turned away or not being able to find a space in our public hospitals. This is the pattern that has taken place over the last year. And what we see is that the cases have increased significantly certainly since August, and markedly since February of this year. So this looks at the daily number of cases for each day since it started in March of last year. This now looks at the cumulative number of cases, and we see where we had this uptick in August of 2020, and then a further uptick in the latter part of February of 2021. And similarly, we've seen the deaths numbers go up, And then we are up to a couple days ago, we had all of 12 persons dying in one day from COVID-19. So this is a serious public health challenge and requires a serious response. So why do we suggest the vaccination? So clearly we have a global pandemic. There are millions of deaths. There is no cure for this disease, and there are limited treatments. Yes, we have preventive measures, but most persons complain. They're inconvenient. We don't like wearing masks. We can't greet and hug our friends and colleagues as we used to do in the past. Many persons have lost jobs, and the economic debilitation has been marked. So here we have an option that can prevent disease, reduce the severity of disease, save lives, restore norms, and restore economic potential. And if we have this opportunity, then we certainly should be seeking to go for it rather than to look at it with skepticism. So in addition, vaccines are more than just a theoretical option. There are now several vaccines that are available for use and have been approved by several regulatory agencies. These include the Food and Drug Administration in the United States, Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency in the United Kingdom, the European Medicines Agency for the European Union, and the World Health Organization has convened a group, the Strategic Advisory Group of Experts on Immunization, which reviews the relevant data and make recommendations whether vaccines should be used or not. So what are the regulatory procedures? The agencies will review all information concerning the vaccines. They look at the studies that have been conducted to ensure that the studies demonstrate that the drugs are, or the vaccines are effective, also that they are safe. So they look at side effects, they look at deaths if any have occurred, and make an informed decision as to whether or not these agents are safe for public use. Now, the review team usually consists of experts in the field. And of course, these are persons with vast experience and critical thinking capacity, and therefore they are going to put their everything into ensuring that the advice and the decisions that are given stand up to proper scrutiny. Now, if the vaccines are considered safe and effective, then approval is given at that time. Now, it is useful to note that the process that produces the vaccines is the same rigorous process that we use for medicines that are used to treat various medical conditions. So it goes through the same type of evaluation before approval, and therefore we can be confident that the procedures are put in place to ensure that what is used in the public domain is safe and effective. So what are the testing procedures? Before a vaccine or a drug for that matter can get to market, they start with testing in laboratory experiments to identify agents that have potential to produce the desired effect. In this case, vaccines that can promote an immune response. So we first start with the laboratory experiments, and then afterwards, experiments are conducted in animals to demonstrate that immunity is produced by these agents. After it has been established that these drugs have an effect in the laboratory and in animals, then we move to the phase of human trials. And there are 3 phases in which human trials are conducted. Phase 1 trials, vaccines that show effect are tested in a small group of healthy persons. In the phase 2, the vaccines are tested in larger groups of individuals to establish safety and that they do have the desired effect. And then the phase 3 trials, which are required before any agent can be licensed, vaccines are tested in large numbers of persons to establish whether they prevent disease or death or other outcome of interest, and to assess its safety in the target population. Just to note that because of the urgency of the pandemic, in some situations, the phase 2 and phase 3 trials were combined so that we could get to the marketing phase earlier because of the urgency. However, all the steps would have been conducted and no shortcuts would have been taken. So what are the vaccines that are available? At present, there is the Pfizer vaccine, which is a messenger RNA vaccine, Moderna, which is also a messenger RNA vaccine. There's the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine, which uses an adenovirus vector, and the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which also uses an adenovirus vector. And there are several others, some of which are already licensed and in use. There's a Sputnik in Russia. There are a couple in China. There's some in India. And just to mention that the Cuban vaccine is currently in clinical trials, but not yet officially approved for use in the broad spectrum. So a little bit now about the AstraZeneca vaccine. This vaccine was developed by the Oxford University and the AstraZeneca Pharmaceutical Company. And just to say, AstraZeneca is a multinational pharmaceutical company with headquarters in Cambridge, England. It was founded in 1999 by the merger of Swedish Astra AB and British Zeneca Group, and is the producer of popular drugs which many of us know and have taken, such as Nexium or Crestor. This vaccine has two manufacturers. There's AstraZeneca, which is done in the UK, and then there is the cooperation between Verity Pharmaceuticals and Serum Institute of India, which produces the vaccine in India under the trade name COVID Shield. So the same vaccine is produced at two different sites, but it is the same. So as we mentioned, this vaccine was developed by Oxford University. It uses a replication deficient adenovirus. So this is a virus that doesn't have the capacity to multiply in the human body. This virus contains the antigen or spike protein from the coronavirus. And when a person is vaccinated, then the body produces antibodies that we mentioned before against this spike protein, and therefore will block its entry into human cells. So this is just a schematic trying to explain in a little bit more detail how the vaccine works. So we start with the where scientists take the gene from the spike protein and add this to the harmless virus, which is then injected into the patient. The vaccine enters the cell and starts to produce the spike protein. Now, the body recognizes the spike protein as foreign and activates its immune system to produce antibodies and T cells, which will destroy these or block these spike proteins. Therefore, if the patient later gets the coronavirus, they have antibodies against the spike protein. These antibodies will bind to the spike protein, and therefore the virus is unable to enter into the human cells. And therefore the person has either doesn't get the infection or sometimes may get a much milder form of the infection. So what's the evidence that this vaccine works? just to say that we have two major studies published in the Lancet, which is one of the major leading medical journals, and they have found that the vaccine is safe and effective. I'll just share a little bit from the first study so that we can understand part of the process that leads to the approval of the vaccine. So this trial was conducted in the United Kingdom, in Brazil, as well as in South Africa. They recruited over almost 24,000 persons over the age of 18 years between April and November of 2020. In the analysis that was reported in December, they included 11,000 or almost 12,000 persons, and persons got either the active vaccine or they got an injection of saline or another vaccine which is in common use against meningococcus. Now, of the persons who received the vaccine, that was a total of 5,807. And out of those 5,807 persons that received the vaccine, 30 persons developed COVID-19. There were 5,829 in the control group, and of that group, 101 persons developed COVID-19. So we can see that 3 times as many persons developed COVID-19 among those who were not vaccinated compared to those who were vaccinated. So the vaccine efficacy was found to be 70%, which is essentially saying that the vaccine was 70% effective in preventing COVID-19. Just to note that of the 131 persons who developed COVID-19 in the study, 10 patients were hospitalized, but all 10 of these persons were in the control group. So none of the persons who got the vaccine required hospitalization. And then this is just a slide to show one of the major outcomes of the study. And what we want to highlight here is that the top graph or the top line, let me go back, shows those who got the control, and here those who got the active vaccine. And the number of cases was much lower among those with the vaccine compared to those in the control. And importantly, from about 30 days, you could see clear distinction between the two groups, showing that the vaccine was effective in preventing COVID-19. Now, what about safety? Across all 4 studies, the vaccine was found to have a very good safety profile. Serious adverse effects and adverse effects of special interest were similar in both groups. So there were a similar number of complications in those who received the vaccine compared to those who were in the control group. So of the serious adverse effects, there were 168, and 79 of these occurred in the vaccine group and 89 in the control group. Of the other adverse events, 84 occurred in the vaccine group and 91 in the control group. Now, 3 of these adverse effects were thought to be possibly related to either the vaccine or the control. One was a case of hemolytic anemia, where the blood cells were broken down and the persons would have developed a low blood count. And this occurred in the control group approximately 10 days after receiving the control vaccine. There was a case of transverse myelitis, which is some inflammation in the spinal cord, which occurred 14 days after the Booster vaccine. And one person developed a very high fever in excess of 40 degrees Celsius. And there are 2 other cases of transverse myelitis, but these were not considered to be vaccine related. And there were 4 deaths, but none of these were thought to be vaccine related. One was a road traffic accident, One was a result of blunt trauma, one was a homicide, and the other was a case of fungal pneumonia. So the authors concluded that the vaccine had an acceptable safety profile and has been found to be efficacious against symptomatic COVID-19 in the interim analysis. So one would ask, can the vaccine stop transmission? And the simple answer to that is yes. If we can successfully vaccinate the majority of the population, most persons think about 70%, then we will achieve herd immunity and eventually reduce transmission to very low levels or to be able to stop transmission completely.
Hold on, the pastor.
Now, what happens after
Pastor,
the vaccinations? There are still many unknowns. So we have already started to see variants of the virus, which means that vaccines may be less effective against the variants, and it is possible that there may be the need for repeated vaccinations. However, we can be assured that sometime in the near future,
but pastor, oh, if you vaccinated and need repeated vaccination.
Hold on, Dr. Ferguson, just a minute. The host, who is Mr. Towns. Dr. Ferguson, could you proceed, sir, by opening your microphone?
Okay, so I'm almost done. That's good. Right, so we may need repeat vaccinations, but we can expect that we should be able to go without masks, to resume close contact. But for those of us in the medical field, it is likely that we may still need to use masks unless we have completely eradicated the virus. However, we must all remain vigilant. So vaccines will make a big difference, but let us not let down our guard. We saw what happened with polio when we stopped the vaccination process. We have to ensure that this is something that is maintained to keep the nation, COVID-free, or to keep this under control. So finally, I close with a quotation from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, which reminds us, there hath no temptation taken you, but such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not suffer you to be tempted above that ye are able, but with the temptation also make a way of escape, that ye may be able to bear it. I suggest to us today that the vaccination may be one of the ways in which the Lord is providing a way of escape for us to be able to effectively deal with this COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ferguson. That was an excellent presentation. I saw a comment on YouTube saying that this presentation should be on TVJ. RJR, we know that we have a wealth of information here this afternoon. Dr. Ferguson spoke about the history, smallpox, poliomyelitis, measles, rubella. These are just some of the diseases that we have had to vaccinate for in the past and have successfully controlled these diseases. He also spoke about the levels of testing that each vaccine has to go through. Whether we think it was made on a rush or not, they still have to go through certain levels. So we thank you for that. And he also gave us a detailing on how the vaccine was developed, who had reactions to it, and how they came to where we are now, where we're able to take this vaccine. Excellent, sir. Thank you very much. Now I'm asking some housekeeping, the host, if you could please mute all participants. There is an option to do so, and just to leave the 4 co-hosts open so that we are the only ones that are able to speak on the Zoom. We have a YouTube link. The YouTube link was placed in the chat, and we have over 500 persons watching on YouTube, and we also have persons watching on Facebook. We have increased the number for this Zoom room up to 1,000. So if you have someone who was trying to get in before and was unable to, please ask them to now log on. They will be able to come into the Zoom room. We are going to proceed now, and our own Bishop, Dr. Evan Nepal, is online now, and he is going to be introducing us to our second speaker. He is the Senior Medical Officer for the Savnamar Hospital, and he is the head of the obstetrics and gynecology in Savlamar from 1991 to the now 2016. From 1991 to 2016. He is also the director of the Royal Center. A lot of our Pentecostal ladies have been there and have received excellent care from him. I want to bring him on the Zoom right now, and he will be introducing our next speaker. And I'll see you again when we get to the question and answer sections. Just before Dr. Nepal comes on, when we get to the question and answer section, we are going to be taking only questions in the chat. So we're not going to allow persons to speak, or we will see if we can do the option of the raised hands, but it has to be controlled because we are on several platforms and we are almost over 1,000 here tonight. So please begin to put your questions in the chat. I will begin to record them. And then after the second speaker, we will have a discussion across the panel and we will ask both speakers questions. Dr. Bishop Nepal, could you come on at this time, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator Moderator. So glad to see you again and to greet everyone. I was so impressed by that presentation just now. Someone said that it should be on TVJ. No, man. I think this should be on BBC or CNN. I just want to congratulate Prof for that wonderful presentation that he did, as usual. And I'm so glad for this opportunity. And the fact that so many folks are on definitely is saying a lot. And it means that you are interested in this bit. I'm so glad that I'm here and so honored to introduce our next speaker, who is no stranger to us in Savlamar. I'm extremely proud of the fact that she is a daughter of the soil, having been born in Westmoreland and went to the best high school in Jamaica, that is. And of course, you all know. Let me just correct Sister McFarlane. I am no longer the SMO for Savlamar Hospital. It's been a long time. Many years. Could have been about 3 SMOs that came by after I did office. I'm also a retired consultant. My retirement came in 2016. And so I am no longer head of the obstetrics and gynecology department. I'm solely in private practice at the Royal Medical Center and involved also in the church work. So I'm very happy this afternoon to present to you a daughter of the soil. She went to the best high school in Jamaica, that is the Manning's High School, where she spent 7 years. After which she went to United States, where in New York at the Dutchess Community College and the Vassar College, where she obtained a bachelor's degree in biology with, of course, honors. She then returned to Jamaica to pursue medicine, which, of course, the prestigious University of the West Indies that produced people like Professor Trevor Ferguson. And she went and did internship in Princess Margaret Hospital in the Bahamas. pop over to the United States, where she did some stint of residency in family medicine. And she thought it fit to have returned back to Jamaica, where she served. And after which she entered the university program and had her master's in public health with distinction. We're so glad she came back west, where she spent quite a while in the St. Parish of St. James and did quite a good job there. And because of the great work that she did there, she was now promoted to be here in Westmoreland. And today we find her with the hot potato of COVID. She has made her name. She's a household name now in Westmoreland. And we are so glad for her. I tell you the honest truth, with Dr. Marcia Graham and her team, if it wasn't for this team that she heads, we would be having some serious issues in Westmoreland. Just this morning, I understood that there were over 41 clients on a ward of that was supposed to be just 35 of COVID patients in our little hospital. So that is saying a whole lot. And if it wasn't for her intuition and her expertise, we'd be much worse off. So may I present to you the woman for this moment in the person of Dr. Marcia Graham, as she gave us a very, very practical presentation, a little different from the fancy things, but certainly telling us what's really going on down here and on the ground. Over to you, Dr. Graham.
Good afternoon. Am I being heard?
You are being heard, Dr. Graham, but there's a feedback.
So I'm gonna get off. I want to be given host privilege on my second number so I can share slides.
Your second number. That means you're going to enter the room twice. Please let us know the name you're entering as so that the host can make you co-host.
It's the same Dr. Marcia Graham.
Dr. Marcia Graham.
Initially. Spot.
Okay, so you're in as Dr. Marcia Graham right now?
Yes.
Okay, Bishop McGregor?
Yes, she is now co-host.
Okay, great. So please go ahead, Dr. Graham.
All right.
All right.
I will log off the other one now that I have been acknowledged on this. Okay, so good afternoon, and it's my pleasure to have you to join in this occasion with you. I am going to start sharing screen. I know that we have limited time, and Dr. Ferguson, I really enjoyed your presentation. I think this is a wonderful opportunity to share. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly as possible take you through some information on COVID-19, particularly as it relates to the community of faith and some of the precautions that would be applicable, and also to say a little about the vaccine, not from a technical point of view, but in terms of what the rollout plan is from the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So let me start by saying that we should always try to get information from credible sources. And one of such source would be the World Health Organization. But in terms of what is happening on the ground in Jamaica, the Ministry of Health and Wellness has a website that you can visit. It's moh.gov. When you go to the website, you look for the tab that says COVID-19. There's a drop-down box that will give you the option for the COVID-19 clinical management summary. And there is where you get the most up-to-date information on what is happening with the virus. You will hear it in the media, the latest number of cases confirmed. This is at your fingertip at the Ministry of Health and Wellness website. And so the URL is moh.gov.jm, update coronavirus. But once you go to the moh.gov website, click on COVID-19 and then drop down COVID-19 clinical management summary. It will give you the information. And I'm just going to show you some screenshots of the information that's there. So it gives you the information by parish, the number of new cases. The middle column tells you the number of new cases that were added in the last 24 hours. And the far right column gives you the total number of cases since the start of the pandemic. You will also get information on the positivity rate, how many are positive, how many are negative. There's information on the number of deaths in the last 24 hours, as well as the total number of deaths. And it gives you a breakdown as to the age, gender, and parish of residents of the latest number of deaths. Very importantly, and this is not the latest data, I'm just showing you some of the information that's there, is the number of hospitalization. And this is where the COVID-19 vaccine has shown to be most effective in reducing the number of persons who are moderately or critically ill, the number of persons who need hospitalization, and the number of persons who die. This is where the vaccine has proven to be giving us quite a good impact. So you'll find that information also on the Ministry of Health website. You will also see the number of deaths. Just to say that from time to time, you will see maps like this being projected at press conferences, at press brief, and it just goes to show the impact of COVID-19 over the last 2 weeks in a particular parish. So for the parish of Westmoreland, which is pictured here, the white areas are the areas where we don't currently have any active cases, and the pink areas are where you will have had persons who would have been diagnosed with COVID-19 within the last 14 days, and therefore these persons are still infectious. So it means that extra caution needs to be taken in the areas that are pink. But because some persons are asymptomatic, most persons are, you still need to be cautious in all areas of the parish, and indeed wherever you go at all areas in the country, because we are in community spread. Now, just to say in terms of information, another area that you can get valuable information is on the website of the Office of the Prime Minister. That is where you will find the Disaster Risk Management Order. We call it DRM for short. And we have the 2020 Disaster Risk Management Order. It is on the Office of the Prime Minister website. It's several pages long, 60 odd pages, but don't be daunted. There are some areas that would be of special interest to the community of faith. These are pages 31 to 33. I would have taken a screenshot on some excerpt of them. Of course, funerals and burials have now been suspended, but this is what the original order looked like. And then when you go to the website, you need to click on the latest amendment, because based on the surge that we are seeing in the population, then Cabinet will deliberate and they will amend the original order for 2021 to reflect and adjust our protocols to try to contain the spread based on the latest statistics that we are getting out of our testing and confirmation. So you have section 18 that deals with funeral services and burial. That should be pertinent to those of you in church as well as otherwise. You also have section 19 that deals with services at places of worship, and that continues through to section 20 that deals with marriage ceremonies. And the latest change is that the marriage ceremonies have been reduced to 25 as maximum, whereas 50 was original at the start of the year. Just want to segue to say that most persons with COVID-19 are asymptomatic. Over 80% of persons there are asymptomatic or have very mild disease. You have another 14% that will have severe disease, and then about 5% that will be critically ill. And unfortunately, a significant number of these persons end up dying. So the take-home message is that persons might look normal or be asymptomatic and have COVID-19, and therefore you cannot let down your guard. We know that currently, up until the 3rd of March, there has been a curtailment of face-to-face services. However, it is important to note that we do not anticipate that this will continue indefinitely. And so it is very important for us to understand some of the protocols that need to be taking place at the place of worship so that we can know how to operate and what mechanism to put in place. One second, please. Yes, sorry about that interruption. So we need to understand what it is that we need to put into place as the community of faith, that when we are allowed to gather face-to-face again in larger numbers than the 10 that is allowed just for technical presentation of online services, that we make it a safe space for persons to congregate until we achieve the herd immunity that might dictate that some of the protocols change. But for now, we are observing the protocols as is prescribed by the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So in terms of the place of worship, we understand that some persons would have been looking out for fever, cough, difficulty breathing, chest pain as the symptoms. But the fact of the matter is that we have been seeing persons who just have generalized weakness. For those who have symptoms, remember, most persons have no symptoms at all, but there are also persons that might have loss of smell, loss of taste, pain in their limbs, and so you can't tell by looking. So what do you need to do as the community of faith to decrease transmission? Some of these are general things. The physical distancing, we recommend 6 feet as much as possible. If not, you try to distance as far as you can, under 6 feet. Covering your cough and sneeze, wearing a facial covering, which could be a cloth mask or a medical mask. We recommend that you observe hand hygiene, which could be hand washing or hand rub. When we are talking about going to a place of worship, we recommend that you do a temperature check, and we also recommend that you go a step further than testing the temperature and that you actually keep a logbook where you record the person's name and the temperature. This becomes very important in the event that you would have had a service, somebody would have attended, and the next day they call you to say they're not feeling well. And that person might subsequently test COVID-19 positive. It means that that person would have been a part of a fellowship or congregation while they were infectious and incubating the disease. And so if you practice to keep a logbook of your congregants, then if we have to do contact tracing, it will help to establish who are the possible persons that might have been exposed to that person while they were in the infectious stage. And so we recommend temperature check as well as a logbook. We recommend that you do cleaning and sanitizing, and this should include the hands of the persons each time they enter the sanctuary, the place of worship, but also the mic and the podium. We have noticed that when the place of worship was negotiated, and currently that is the largest gathering that is allowed by law, those are the gatherings at the place of worship until that was curtailed at the beginning of this month. Part of the condition was that mask was worn, but as persons would have seen other persons, some of our public officials at press conferences, not sharing mic, spaced out and delivering without wearing a mask, I noticed that this has caught on, and that in some places of worship, we see persons are doing praise and worship, persons are preaching, persons are doing different activities without wearing the mask. That was not part of the original discussion under which the church was allowed to convene face to face. And so the facial coverage should stay on during the duration of the service. It is very important because from time to time, I see persons taking off their mask, speaking at a podium, using a mic. Somebody else comes, take off their mask, hold the same mic that would have been sprinkled with secretion from the previous speaker. It has not been sanitized. The podium has not been sanitized. And that is a recipe for spread of infection and to cause an outbreak fueled within a church congregation. And so I am encouraging us to abide by the protocol. I know that your brain might tell you that if you keep on a mask that you will not be hurt, but you should mask up before you talk up. Trust me, I speak all the time when I'm in public with my mask, and I think you can attest to the fact that you hear me loud and clear when I speak. And so it is very important that you practice to speak with your mask on, and that you make it a safe space for fellowship. We ask that persons are very mindful in terms of the length of the service, because for some persons who are older, who are isolated, coming to a place of worship is their outing for the day because they are on stay at home or by virtue of the fact that they're 60 years and older. When they come for fellowship, they would like to get meaningful edification and fellowship without being extended too much, because some of these persons would have been home and have not had a lot of opportunity for mass practice. And so their mass tolerance might be low. So we encourage persons as much as possible to be wise in the length of the service so that they can get a meaningful interface without it being extended so that they get mass weary. Some of these older persons might not have the technology to join online to your Facebook, your YouTube, your Zoom meetings. And so if they can come out and get the edification, get the fellowship in a reasonable length of time, then we encourage that. So we encourage persons, don't do the usual 3.5 hour service, because that might not serve your most vulnerable, most needy senior citizens in the congregation very well. If they need to take mass break, then persons should feel comfortable in stepping outside, taking the mass break and coming inside. They should not take the mass break inside the sanctuary where they are crowded. It's fairly crowded. We ask persons to not pull the mask down below their nose during the service, because we see that too, that they are taking a mask break with the mouth covered, or sometimes they pull it down below the mouth and nose and stay in the congregation and it goes unnoticed. They are exposing themselves. We ask persons to mark the seats. You should measure out the seats so that you're seated 6 feet apart, and we recommend that you put a marker so that persons coming don't have to guess where is a safe place to sit. They can identify for themselves or be ushered to a seat that is 6 feet apart from another congregant. So these are some of the COVID protocols that we recommend for the place of worship. Let me hurry along. Signage help, because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and it can help persons to be reminded of some of the protocols during the place of worship, during the service. Mask wearing is very important. This is just a quick slide to say that if both persons wear a mask, even if someone is asymptomatic and infected, if they wear a mask and the other person wears a mask, the transmission of COVID-19 is cut down to a 1.5% probability. So facial covering has been proven to be very effective in breaking the chain of transmission. And it doesn't matter if it is the original Wuhan strain, if it is the British, the UK, the South African, or the Brazilian strain, the protocols of mask wearing, physical distance will protect you from all strains of COVID-19. So this is very important. Hand washing or hand rubbing is important. If you use the bathroom, you need to wash your hand. Hand rubbing is not to be applied after you're using the bathroom. If you change the diaper for a child or an adult you're caring for, your hand needs to be washed. If you have visible dirt on your hand needs to be washed. So hand rub is done with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer outside of those circumstances. You should make sure you follow the chart so that you get all the surfaces and you do it for the required time. So just to close out with general tips, wash your hands, cover your cough, and after you cough, you need to dispose of the tissue and then wash your hands or sanitize. Avoid touching your mouth, nose, or eyes. Practice physical distancing, and if you're not well, do not go to church, do not go out, isolate yourself, contact your healthcare provider to get advice on how to proceed. So let's talk about the vaccine. Dr. Ferguson would have spoken about the vaccine and the whole anguish and loss that we would have suffered, trying to ask the medical fraternity to find some solution to help to balance the scale. And the vaccine Before the vaccine, we would have had different medicines that were tried, the azithromycin, the hydroxychloroquine, you'd have heard of ivermectin, remdesivir, among others, but still the scale was not balanced. And then we came along with the COVID-19 vaccine, and it is proven to be effective in balancing the scale so we can resume near normal activities. So in terms of the rollout plan for the vaccine, for phase 1, the focus is on healthcare workers, and we are in March, so we are in phase 1. The focus is on healthcare workers, 25,000 elderlies, the Jamaica Defense Force, and the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Currently, for this week ending March up to March 19, the focus is on healthcare workers, the Jamaica Defense Force, and the Jamaica Constabulary Force. The elderly has been asked to wait for the administration of the vaccine until we have vaccinated these categories of frontline workers. There might be the occasion for the elderly to be vaccinated during this week if at the end of the day there is a dropout of persons in these categories, so police, soldier, or healthcare worker who for whatever reason did not show up for their appointment, and we have doses remaining, then elderlies that we are already aware of who live within close proximity to our vaccination site, and we currently have 2 in Westmoreland, the Savannah Lamar Health Center and the Savannah Lamar Hospital, but the Savannah Lamar Hospital is focusing on vaccinating the staff at the hospital on all 3 shifts. So the Savannah Lamar Health Center is where we have started doing the police. We did the first batch yesterday, and we continue to do other healthcare workers from private and public sector. But in the event that at the end of the day, we have unused doses, we do not wish to waste them. And so that is where now we will be calling on elderly persons, persons over 60, especially those with comorbidities, who live close to the hospital, who can get there within half an hour to an hour, that we can use up those doses at the end of the day to provide wastage. So that is the only condition under which, for the rest of this week, we will be doing the elderly. The Minister of Health, the Permanent Secretary, met with us as medical officers of health yesterday, and they will be looking before the end of the week to inform the general public, the population, as to how in an equitable and transparent way, persons who are over 65 can register to get the vaccine so that we can do the 25,000 who are earmarked to be vaccinated in April. And then we are expecting to do another population of persons over 60 in April. But for March, we are looking to do 25,000, but most of those will not be done this week. This week, we are focusing on healthcare workers, police, and soldiers. So just to give you an idea of the rollout plan, just to say we are currently operating from 2 sites, the hospital and the health center, and persons can reach the health center at 876-789-0710. So these are the only 2 vaccination sites that are currently in operation in the parish. As we roll out further, then other health centers will become a part of the plan. And as we get more vaccines, then there are some blitz sessions that are being planned, and this will take place at the Sean Lavery Faith Hall, but we will get more information as we move forward in our vaccine rollout. So for phase 1 and for the balance of this week, we are focusing on healthcare workers, the soldiers, and the police. But occasionally we might be able to accommodate a person over 60 at the end of the day in the event that we have leftover doses. So some common questions, Mitt, as I close: is the vaccine free? We're asked this quite often. Yes, the vaccine is free. Is the vaccine mandatory or compulsory? No, it is not. But as we interface with you and show you the benefits that far outweigh the risk from the vaccine, we hope that you will take the opportunity to benefit and be a part of bringing us to near normal, as we have suffered long and hard for over a year now because of this outbreak. So we are hoping that although it's not compulsory or mandatory, when your time comes, you will make use of the opportunity to take this vaccine. Another question that's asked very often: does it cause infertility? And the answer is no. There is a syncytial protein that some persons would have questioned whether it cross-reacts with this placental protein that would cause infertility. It does not. We have no vaccine currently that causes infertility. As a matter of fact, some of the ladies that took part in the trials got pregnant, and some have started delivering healthy babies. Question again, can I stop wearing a mask, observing the physical distances, etc. after we get vaccinated? No, not at this point in time, because we would not have reached the stage of getting herd immunity. In Jamaica, we are just at the start of our vaccine rollout. And so we ask that you continue to wear your mask, because some persons who get immunized might even have been incubating COVID-19. And so you need to be alert. The vaccine also takes 2 to 3 weeks for your body to develop the optimal immune response to protect you, to give the protection that the vaccine brings. And so we ask that at this time, even after you would have gotten your vaccine, that you continue to wear a mask and observe the other protocols. One of the other questions we get asked, that is one of the myths, does the vaccine have a microchip in it? No. It's using the adenovirus technology, and so it has some genetic material that codes for the spike protein. That is what is inside the vaccine. Any tracking or chip that goes along with the vaccine is in the packaging, because we have to make sure that the cold chain is maintained, that the vaccine is maintained at a particular temperature that will maintain its effectiveness. Because if the vaccine is brought into too warm an environment, it will no longer be effective. And so the tracking that we do is to ensure that the cold chain is maintained. So there's a temperature tracker that goes in the packaging with the vaccine. We also track, as we give the vaccine, the batch number and the lot number of the vaccine, that if there's any issue with it, we know which lot number, which batch number you got, that we can continue to monitor you, because we'll be monitoring persons up to 1 year after the administration of the vaccine. The other thing that we do is we keep a tracking register so that we can call you back to get your second dose of the vaccine, because the AstraZeneca is a 2-dose vaccine, the second dose being given 8 to 12 weeks after the first. So that is how we track. And ladies and gentlemen, most of you have a cell phone, one or more. And so if persons really want to track you, that is probably the easiest way for us to track you down, not by using any chip in the vaccine. So I want to thank you for your time and attention. I'll pause here so that we can entertain as many of your questions as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Graham. That was a wonderful presentation and very, very, very informative, very down to earth, very much what we expected. Really sorry that we grabbed you at such a late time, and just a couple of weeks, well, maybe a week and little notice, but that was really thorough. I know you could have said much more. I've heard you say much more, but I think that's sufficient. So I'm going to hand over back to Denise right now, and she can maybe bring us into some question and answers as you would have planned.
Thank you, Bishop Nepal. But Bishop, before you go, I know that you received your vaccine on Friday. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your experience receiving your shot, just before we move to the rest of the questions. Bishop Nepal. Bishop, are you there? Can you give us a little bit about your experience? My
experience. Okay. I was trying to draw up my little picture here. I did a little video. My wife did a video of it when I had mine. It was an interesting experience. The health center was very organized, I must say. I trust that most of them are like that. And my wife actually did an interview. I don't know if you can listen to it. Can you see it?
Yeah, go ahead. You can share your screen. You're a co-host, so share your screen and let us just watch the video.
Okay, let me see if I can just do this now. Just give me a few. I'm not sure if I can do this, Not very bright, but let me just give you one. All right, let me just. I hope you can hear it.
Yes, we can.
Yes. You can? All right. It's going now. Keep quiet now.
Hi, Dr. Nepal. I know that we're just coming from the Savannah Lamar Health Clinic. Could you tell me exactly what you did? why you do it, and give me a little advice for the people you serve.
Well, I just received my first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine by AstraZeneca. I did it because I think it was necessary in this pandemic to prevent the virus contacting me and also folks from actually getting it. We have had vaccination over the years. My mother, after she gave birth to me, I got the first vaccine, the BCG vaccine, which most of us have had to prevent tuberculosis. So it's not anything new. The second was actually at 6 weeks when my mother took us to the clinic, and I received the measles, the mumps, and the polio drop. Measles, mumps, and I think.
All right, let me just speed it up. Basically, it was a very good experience. I didn't have any pain. I was smart in that I took 2 Panadols before I went there. I think it was unnecessary, but I took 2 Panadols afterwards because I was going to work late that evening. As a matter of fact, I had surgery that day, so I just prepared myself. I didn't have any pain. I had a good night, and the following day, okay. I think that was Friday, and I'm still alive today. And as I said in the video here, that we have had vaccine all these years is not something new. And my concept is that this body that I have here, the Lord give me to take care of. I know I have the Holy Ghost. And it's very, very clear in the scripture that our body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. And so it is my duty to protect my body, which has the Holy Spirit, and to make sure I protect it well. And so it's also a responsibility of us as being citizens and our brother's keeper to make sure that we prevent others from getting it. So I have had it, my wife has had it, all the doctors that I acquainted in Savlamar has had it. My son is a doctor in Howard. He got his, my daughter-in-law got hers. And I think it's something that most of the nursing staff at the Savlamar Hospital got there last week. And so I think that it is not anything to fear. As everything in life, you do have percentage. If you're driving from here to Kingston, 1 car may go over Spiritual Hill, 1 car may blow a tire, but that's a percentage. And life is all a percent. Even drinking a water, you can get damaged. So if you hear people say that they have 1 or 2 cases of side effects, that is life. The truth is that that's what Dr. Ferguson's job is for, to do studies and to show you the safety of these things.
Thank you so much. That was so very good and informative. I feel more comfortable about receiving my shot. I'm going to be asking 3 questions of Dr. Ferguson and 2 questions of Dr. Graham. And these questions are coming from the chat. So Dr. Ferguson, I'm going to take you first. There are 3 questions here. Someone wants to ask, why should the vaccine be taken 2 times? Why are you getting 2 doses? And the length of time it took to develop the AstraZeneca, if all the other vaccines were developed, someone wants to know if the AstraZeneca was developed faster than all the other vaccines that are out there. So please answer that question along with why must someone receive 2 shots? And the third question for you, Dr. Ferguson, is how are the vaccines tied to end-time prophecy? That's for Dr. Ferguson. Dr. Graham, I'll give you yours while Dr. Ferguson is answering. Someone wants to know if you have seizures, can you take the vaccine? If you actually have the COVID-19, and I've gotten this question several times, if you have the disease, should you be taking the vaccines? And the third one is, for someone who has diabetes and blood pressure, what effects will the vaccine have on them? And that is for Dr. Graham. So Dr. Trevor Ferguson, could you go ahead, please, and answer those first 3 questions? Why you have to get 2 shots? How fast was the AstraZeneca developed, and is vaccine tied to end-time prophecy?
All right, so thank you very much. The first question in terms of 2 shots really depends on the strategy that the manufacturer is using. As we pointed out, that the body has this system of memory in which initially when a foreign particle is recognized, it produces antibodies, against that specific agent. As a second exposure produces additional response. So the idea behind 2 shots of the vaccine is that by giving the first shot will introduce the body to the vaccine, then antibodies will be developed. The second time around, more antibodies will be developed, and you will get a more comprehensive and lasting immunity. So that is the real rationale behind giving 2. At present, they're still doing studies to try to determine what is the best strategy. As you may have heard, the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is given only once, and therefore, in some cases, 1 vaccine may be effective. And even for the AstraZeneca vaccine, there are analyses that have looked at a single dose and found that the single dose was approximately 76% effective. So a single dose may be adequate. The second dose should give added benefit, and the fine details for that is being worked out. In terms of the development of the AstraZeneca versus the others, whether it's faster, I would say no. So the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines were actually approved before the AstraZeneca vaccine. Essentially, what would have happened, as persons have pointed out in the past, is that the information concerning coronaviruses really started in 2003 when we had the first SARS outbreak. Some persons may recall, others may not, that we had this SARS outbreak, which SARS meant severe acute respiratory syndrome. And this, incidentally, again, I think started in China in 2003, started to spread, but was brought under control within that same year. But persons had started to do studies on that. There's another coronavirus called MERS, which I think was around 2011. So there was previous information concerning the coronaviruses. And therefore, when this pandemic was developed, essentially what was done is that they would have gone back to some of that information. They would have had a head start. They were able to use available research to identify the spike protein and to generate the sequence of the spike protein, and then to initiate the vaccine generating procedures. So in terms of overall, compared to other vaccine, it is faster than average. But remember, we have a crisis. And in general, when there's a crisis, the amount of effort that is put into developing the vaccine is different from what happens in the normal circumstances. During normal times, people may be working on several different projects at a time. With this, essentially, a lot of scientists stopped everything that they were doing and focused all their time on this vaccine because it was considered very urgent. So it is quicker than normal, but it's still, as we pointed out, went through all the phases, all the studies have been done. And recall also that because we're dealing with an acute infectious disease, it doesn't take very long for us to be able to see effectiveness because the number of cases are fairly large and the disease occurs fairly quickly. So that would explain the role that that would have. Now, as it pertains to the vaccine and end time prophecy, I will not make a specific comment on that. That's not something that I have studied specifically. And one of the things that we have to be careful of is that we should not apply an interpretation without proper study. The Bible does tell us that in the last days we will have famine and pestilence. So clearly this is a pestilence, and it is something that we should expect. Of course, the Lord has given us the ability to respond to pestilences in the past, and he will also give us the ability to respond to pestilence in this time. But beyond that, I wouldn't say that there is a specific association between the vaccine and the end times, and I would leave that to those who have done more detailed study on end times and be able to put that within its proper context.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. Are you saying that the vaccine is still in the trial phase? Because someone was asking that question.
Well, put it this way. The trials have not stopped. So in terms of they are continuing to observe and to collect the data, but they would have collected enough information to make a definitive recommendation. So they will continue to monitor persons who got the vaccine, and more details will be released as more time passes. But in essence, given the urgency, do we have enough data upon which to make a decision? And the answer to that is yes. They were able to clearly show that beyond the 30 days, you began to see difference in the rate of infection between those who got the vaccine and those who did not. One doesn't want to wait 2 years and then have another 2 million people, well, by that time, 5 million people or more die before we take a decision, because we do have enough information upon which to make decisions.
Great, thank you so much. Dr. Graham, could you take us now into your set of questions? Do you remember seizure? If you have a seizure, can you take the vaccine? If you have diabetes and high blood pressure, what effects will it have on you? And if you have the virus already, can you take the vaccine, and do you need to get tested for the virus before taking the vaccines? Go ahead, Dr. Graham.
Thank you very much for those questions. So I am going to take the first 2 questions first, and I'm going to use that just to say what are some of the contraindications or what are not contraindications for the vaccine, because I see that there are several other similar questions that are popping up in the chat. So the person asks if they have seizure, should they take the vaccine? The fact of the matter is that it depends on what the seizure is for. If the seizure was in relation to being vaccinated before and it was considered to be a severe reaction, then we would have to do a more detailed history to get that information, because I don't know if the person has a seizure disorder as in epilepsy. That would not be a contraindication to getting the vaccine. But the fact is that if persons have any severe reaction to a previous vaccination, then we would do a more detailed history to assess that person prior to giving them this vaccination. One of the big contraindications is if the person is allergic to the component of the vaccine. And the fact is that the one that is most likely to cause an allergic reaction is the polysorbate 40/80, which most persons don't have an allergic reaction to that. But if somebody have had a history of what we call anaphylaxis, meaning that they would have reacted severely, whether it's a vaccine or a drug, where they have swelling of in their mouth, their nose, blocking off their airways, compromising their breathing, then it means that that particular individual might have a very sensitive or hypersensitive body or immune response. And so we would be very careful in that person, and that might be a contraindication. But if persons have seizure disorder, that is not a contraindication at present. If the person has diabetes or hypertension, that is not a contraindication. As a matter of fact, the persons with comorbidities are the ones that need the protection most. And so far, we're not seeing that persons with diabetes or hypertension have any different reaction to the vaccine than persons that don't. If someone is asking if I'm allergic to penicillin, can I take the vaccine? The answer is yes. It's like saying to you, I'm allergic to fish, so I can't eat chicken. So it has to be a specific allergy that we would say that we would not recommend it. The vaccine is recommended right now for persons who are breastfeeding, persons who are pregnant, especially if they have comorbidities. The studies are showing that the benefits outweigh the risk. Yes, we are studying, and you would have realized that as we get more information, we are not hiding it. As more information becomes available, the information is shared with the public, because we believe in transparency, so that we can have confidence in the products that we are using. So breastfeeding persons who have comorbidities, pregnant women who have comorbidities, the benefits of the vaccine might very well outweigh the risk, and so we encourage them to consider it. As a matter of fact, we have had pregnant persons who in Westmoreland who have died from COVID-19. And so our younger deaths would have been that kind of category of persons. Or younger persons with obesity, with pregnancy, because these comorbidities significantly increase your risk of dying. And the benefit of this vaccine is to save lives and to reduce hospitalization. If you have had COVID-19 before, once you're over the acute phase of the disease and you're well, we actually recommend that you consider taking the vaccine. The fact of the matter is that we don't know how long natural immunity after having the disease lasts, but the evidence is showing that it doesn't last for 6 months or more. So definitely if you've had COVID-19 6 months or more, we are saying you might not have any natural immunity against the disease left. So we recommend that you take the vaccine. But I've had colleagues, medical doctors and others who have had COVID-19 in December, in January, and they have taken the vaccine because they don't know how long the immunity from the disease will last. So the penicillin is not an contraindication, neither is it. In terms of the diabetes, hypertension, as I've said, we don't have any evidence that persons with these comorbid disease have any different reactions to the disease than others. The soreness, the regular side effects, we are not seeing that they're having any additional untoward effect. And whenever you take the vaccine, we monitor you for at least 15 minutes afterwards. And your blood pressure is one of the things that we do before you're allowed to leave the vaccination center. So we check on that. If you have diabetes and hypertension, we actually check your blood sugar and your blood pressure before we give you the vaccine too, to see that those are under reasonable control. And we have actually had to reschedule a couple of persons because their blood pressure was too high. So we take the necessary precautions. Thank you for those questions.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Graham. We're going to have one more round of questions, both for you and for Dr. Ferguson. So I'm going to go with Dr. Ferguson first. Dr. Ferguson, the question about whether or not the vaccine was developed from aborted feti, could you give us a little bit on that, as well as different persons have researched the CDC website and have seen where persons have had adverse reactions from the vaccine on the CDC website. I wonder if you could just shed a little light on that. And finally, in your round, sir, in terms of persons were asking about Jamaica developing or, testing, making their own vaccine. What are your thoughts on that? So those three are for Dr. Ferguson. Dr. Graham, your next round will include if you get severe complications from the vaccine, who is responsible? What do you do? And how do persons know if they're healthy enough to take the vaccines? So those questions for you, Dr. Graham. And Dr. Ferguson, could you take us away on the set of questions now for the second round?
Thank you again. So I'll probably try to tackle them in reverse order. Hopefully I can remember the questions, but so we'll start with the issue of Jamaica developing its own vaccines. That's an excellent thought. However, it would require, we're probably not at this stage have all the necessary technology to support the development of vaccine from start to finish. Certainly not at the rate that we would like to. The capacity can be developed, and I guess it's something that can be done in the future. You would have seen that Cuba has developed its own vaccine and it's being tested in trials. But we have not have a comprehensive drug development system in Jamaica. It is very costly, and of course it requires very good technology. So it may happen in the future, but not right now, at least not from what we expect. In terms of side effects of the vaccines on CDC or any other website. Now, one of the things is that part of I could mention what we call a phase 4 study. In this talk, I spoke about phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, which takes us up to the point that the drug is licensed. Now, after the drug is licensed or it is approved for use in the public, then there is what is called post-marketing surveillance. And entities collect information on all perceived adverse effects in persons who have taken a drug or a vaccine in this case. What is done is that these are documented, the rates of these events are assessed, and what one is trying to do is that, is the rate of adverse events higher than one would expect in the general population? Because as you would have noted in the study, that adverse effects occurred both in persons who received the vaccine and those who did not receive the vaccine. What we want to determine is to whether or not these side effects were caused by the vaccine. So as the data are collected, one will assess the rate or the frequency with which these side effects occur, to try to determine whether or not we can say that they were caused by the vaccine. If a particular side effects are caused by the vaccine, then it is included in the labeling information and people are warned that these side effects may occur. Now, if the side effect is considered sufficiently severe, then it may require that the use of the drug or the vaccine be halted, or if in rare cases, drugs or vaccines have had to be pulled from the market because in the post-marketing experience, it is recognized that the rate of adverse effects were higher than expected, and therefore it was not wise to continue using this drug. So if at any time, any of the regulatory agencies believe that side effects have occurred which are greater than expected and are greater than the expected benefits, because you also have to weigh that, take that into consideration, then a decision would be made that the drug should be pulled from the market. So we don't stop monitoring when the drug is approved. The monitoring continues, and therefore if things are recognized later, then action is still taken. With regards to the issue of the use of fetuses, there is no evidence that these are used in the development of the vaccines. As we mentioned, that the AstraZeneca vaccine uses a adenovirus vector. So this is a harmless virus that is used to facilitate the putting the spike protein into the system. And therefore, this is how it is done so that we can appropriately develop an immune response. But there is no use of fetuses in the development of the vaccine. Certainly, this is the information that is available to all of us. It is the system that produces the vaccines is a trustworthy system. I know there are many persons who have an inherent distrust for authorities, but we have been using these systems for years, and it is not easy for persons to hide and do things undercover, because you know there are whistleblowers, there are persons who will know, and persons will speak out if these things are occurring under the cover. So it is very unlikely that things could be occurring and we're unaware of it, because persons will speak out if if things are being done that are inappropriate and not in the public interest. So over to you.
Yes, Dr. Ferguson, just before you wrap, does the vaccine alter your DNA? This is a very popular question. Are you able to respond to that before we go to Dr. Graham?
So the vaccine does not alter your DNA. So in terms of the
or causes you to change personality?
No, it should not do that. So as we said, what happens is that when they think about if you get infected with a cold virus, it doesn't change you. It doesn't change your personality. It doesn't change how you do things. So essentially, the adenovirus is like a cold virus, but it introduces the protein that causes the COVID-19, and therefore the body produces a reaction to this protein. So it does not enter into the nucleus of the cell where your DNA is. It doesn't change your DNA at all. Now, for the other viruses, so persons who have heard about the Pfizer virus and the Moderna virus, which are mRNA or messenger RNA viruses. What RNA is an instruction to produce protein. So DNA is the genetic information that a person has, and that tells the body the specific things that need to be made and so on. But the DNA is kept within the nucleus of the cells. The DNA is then, the information on DNA is transcribed onto RNA, and then the RNA produces the information to make your proteins. So when the RNA vaccines are used, this again is taking place outside of the nucleus. It is not interacting with your DNA at all. But what this RNA does is that it tells your body to make proteins or antibodies against the spike proteins. So we have to give thanks that God has given the knowledge for persons to understand these complex scientific procedures and to be able to manipulate things in such a way that we can develop cures. So Daniel clearly says that in the last days, knowledge shall increase, and this knowledge, or the ability to get knowledge, really comes from God. So we are using what God has given us to help humanity. Of course, there is the possibility that you can have quote unquote crazy scientists who may want to take things too far, but that is where you have controls and regulators. So it is difficult for somebody to do a lot of the things that you see taking place in science fiction movies and so on, because the regulatory agencies will seek to govern what persons do and determine what is allowed and what is not allowed. And of course, if things are seen, we ask questions, we talk about it, and we take appropriate action. So clearly, there isn't any evidence that the vaccine will in any way alter person's DNA.
Well, that's refreshing to know. Dr. Graham, if you could just give us this round of questions. Are you there, Dr. Graham? I'm not seeing her. I wonder if she fell off.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're
right here.
Okay, great. So you are going to answer now. If we have really adverse reactions, who's responsible, or what should we do if we have really adverse reactions? How do I know I'm healthy enough to take it, and who should not take it? And I have one more question for you, Dr. Graham. If you get like the AstraZeneca first jab, and let's say the one of the other Sputnik, let's just be really wild here, and say one of the other, say we get one of the other vaccine, well, let's say Moderna then, because that's closer to us. Can you get the booster Moderna? Can you take the first shot of AstraZeneca and get the booster Moderna? I think that's something a lot of people are asking. So see if you can take us through this round of questions.
Okay, thank you very much. And Dr. Ferguson, the question you got is one that I get very often, and I give people the analogy. I said, if my DNA machinery is in my bedroom and I make my protein factories on my veranda, somebody can come on my veranda and tell my protein factory to make another protein, but they don't get into my bedroom, so they're not going to alter my DNA. So it's two separate sections of the house. One is sacrosanct, and the other one you can take visitors into it. Anyway, let me answer the last question first.
Yeah, that's a very good explanation, actually.
I just try to find practical ways that persons can relate to let them know how it actually works, because not a lot of us like science or remember science after many years hence. So the recommendation is for the 2-dose vaccines, and right now the Johnson & Johnson is the only one that is a single dose. The recommendation is that both doses are given of the same type of vaccine. So if it's Pfizer for your first dose, it's Pfizer BioNTech for your second dose. If it's Moderna for your first dose, it's Moderna for your second dose. If it's AstraZeneca for your first dose, it's AstraZeneca for the second dose. There has no studies been done with them so far crossing over dose. And so the efficacy that have been proven, the benefits that have been proven has been done using the same product twice, both for the first and the second dose. So that is the recommendation. In terms of the complications and who is responsible, this brings us to the question of indemnity, which I think is one of the popular topics also. And the fact of the matter is that in order to use this product, it is still a relatively new product. Part of the standard procedure is that the drug company, the manufacturer, is not held responsible for any adverse effect. It is a combined effort. And so the manufacturers are good at manufacturing. There are also ministries of health, World Health Organization, other partners to try to bring an end to this pandemic. And so the recommendation and the way that the responsibility is shared is that instead of the manufacturers spending their money in lawsuit, spending their time in courthouse, they are given the indemnity so that they can continue to improve on the product, because now that we're having variants, we have to see how we can improve on the vaccine so that it maintains its effectiveness. And so the ministries of health, the countries, take the responsibility for any adverse effect, because countries already have health systems in place to do a health response. And so the way that the responsibility is shared is that the manufacturer focuses on manufacturing, improving the product, and the governments, the ministries of health, take responsibility for any adverse reaction. So what we currently do at all of our immunization sites, persons are given a card before they leave that if they're having any adverse reaction, this is the number to call. But even above that, what we say to persons, our hospitals are open 24/7, public holiday, weekend in the middle of the night. So if you have any reaction, whether it's due to the vaccine or not, if you're feeling unwell in any way, just like we say, if you think you're having a heart attack, this has nothing to do with COVID-19, visit your hospital any time of day or night. But when you go, bring along your vaccine card and let them know, listen, I got the AstraZeneca vaccine on Wednesday, like I did. And you bring your card so that they can get the information, the batch number, the lot number, it's all there. So that is how we recommend that persons treat with that. And then we'll take it from there, because we have forms that we use. We're looking out for adverse reactions. And so there's a form that we'll complete and that goes up to the Ministry of Health. Don't know, Dr. Ennis from time to time gives feedback on the number of adverse reactions. And we will be chronicling our experience in Jamaica. And so we'll be looking out for the side effects, we'll be documenting these, and these will go up to be collated at the level of Ministry of Health and Wellness. And then if there are any adverse reaction that is plausible and documented to be due to the vaccine, then the Ministry of Health and Wellness will take it from there. We have a legal branch in there, we have the Attorney General, and so that will be dealt with at that level. But I have to caution persons against attributing cause and effect in a vacuum before proper investigation. Again, I'll give you one of my popular analogy. A body of a man is found floating in a river, and somebody come and say, oh God, him drowned. When you examine the body, it is bullet ridden. The man was shot, dead, killed elsewhere, and his body dumped into the river. The fact that you saw a body floating in the river, this doesn't mean that the man drowned. And so I know persons like to jump to conclusion. It's our natural human tendency, but we have to investigate to see what the details of the facts are. And if this is a cause and effect, can dropping in a river cause bullet holes to be found in your body? So I want to caution us against jumping to conclusion. As a matter of fact, one of the things that we have started to do since this pandemic is that anybody that is brought to the hospital dead on arrival, we do a COVID-19 swab on that body. Because at the end of the day, we don't want it to be said that we usually have 10 deaths in 2019 in this age group, and in 2020 we had 15 deaths, and it's COVID kill off the extra 5. We want to be able to say that we had 10 deaths in 2019, we had 15 deaths in 2020, and of the 15 deaths in 2020, 3 of them tested positive for COVID-19 and the other 12 were negative. So we are testing dead bodies for COVID-19 so that in the event at the end of the year, we see what we call excess mortality, excess number of deaths. We are able to speak to whether it is that they catch COVID and they never reach the hospital in time before they died. We can speak to whether or not COVID-19 is a cause of death. So we are trying to be as transparent and as meticulous as possible so that we can be able to have evidence-based conversations and not have aspersions and allegations as to cause of death and other things. So that is what I would say in terms of who is responsible and what to do. How the final question I think you asked me was as to whether or not someone can know if they are healthy enough to get the vaccine. So we usually don't give the vaccines to persons who are acutely ill. So if you're in hospital or if you're feeling unwell, we don't vaccinate persons. And that applies to a baby being brought to the clinic to be vaccinated. We vaccinate persons who are reasonably well. This is not to say that if you are living with a chronic disease and you are healthy, you have high blood pressure, you're going to work, you have sugar, you're going to the market, the supermarket, if you are reasonably well, then we will immunize you, but we do your checks before we administer the vaccine as part of our preliminary. We don't give the vaccine usually though to persons who are very frail. If you are very sick, you are very frail, your body might not be able to mount the immune response that we are trying to stimulate by the vaccine. And so some countries would have said that they are not giving the vaccine to the very elderly because they are very frail. They already had one foot in the grave because of other comorbidities, whether it's advanced age or they have uncontrolled high blood pressure, sugar, terminal cancer. And if you give them the vaccine and they die, persons are going to say that it's the vaccine that killed them. And some of them too, because of their illness, might not be able to mount an immune response, which is what the whole aim of the immunization program is, for you to have an immune response that the next time you see COVID-19, you will have been prepared with preformed weaponry to counteract it. And so these are some of the situations in which we would not give the vaccine. But for most persons who are healthy up and above, there is really not a lot of contraindications to persons not getting the vaccine at this time. Thank you for those questions.
Dr. Graham, someone is asking about a swelling under the armpit. Someone took the vaccine and had a swelling for 2 days and fever. I'm going to ask you what are your thoughts on that? And then I'm going to ask Bishop Nepal just to tell us if he had any of those reactions after the vaccine was given.
Okay, so
this is something common that is, this is something common that's a sore arm, maybe the lymph nodes swelling under the armpit. So could you shed a little light on that, please?
Yes, I will. So let me escape. I am going to share screen and just show you a slide that has the common side effects so that we tell persons to expect. They also, at the time of vaccination, they get a brochure that would give them the information. But some of the common side effects that you get, which is more than 1 in 10 persons, is the tenderness, the warmth, the swelling at the injection site, having fatigue, feeling chill or feeling feverish is one of the more common side effects. Up to 1 in 10 will get lump at the injection site, fever, vomiting, flu-like symptoms. And then 1 in 100 will get what you call the swelling under the arms, the enlarged lymph node. In Jamaican terms, we call it wax and kernel. So 1 in 100 person will get that. So that is not unexpected. And at the time of your vaccination, you get an information brochure that will give you this information. And like the, Bishop Nepal had mentioned, we also encourage persons to have some Panadol at home so that in the event that they feel feverish or feel achy, that they have that to take. And we also recommend that persons stay well hydrated after the vaccination also. So that is part and parcel of what is the common side effect. of the vaccine. So that is not unexpected, but some happen more frequently than others. Some are 1 in 10, some are 1 in 100, some are 1 in 1,000. But the two you mentioned, the swelling under the arm affects 1 in 100, and the feeling feverish, that is more common. You can get that up to 1 in 10 persons. Thank you for those questions.
Great. Thank you so much. Bishop Nepal, you want to tell us if you had any of these common side effects after you took your shot?
Not really. There was a very mild form of malaise, but I think the Panadol, the fact that I took the Panadol before could have helped, and the following day could have been worse than the night before. But it was not anything of any great effect. And then because I worked hard on Friday evening, I wasn't wondering, it was just stress and exertion.
Oh, okay.
My wife had it also, another the other doctors have not really had any complaints with them.
Okay.
Can I just add something here?
Sure. Go right ahead.
Yeah, something coming in the chat concerning the fetus or fetal cell line.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize, you see, we have to be careful with what folks mention, because there are other studies and there are other things that we do with fetal and placental cell line. So sometimes we hear of these things applying to other scientific methodology, and we tend to think that's how a vaccine came about. I think what Professor Prof was saying is that the manufacturing, or the way in which the vaccines are made, had nothing to do with anything with fetus or anything to do with placenta. Yes, research is there that would have led for certain type of things in the past, but it's not like these extracts that we get. It's not like the vaccines are gotten from extracts of fetus. The other thing I want to just emphasize quickly, with Dr. Graham mentioning pregnant mothers, that is my area.
Yeah.
In my practice and from my reading, certainly if a person is in the first trimester of pregnancy, we tend to avoid all form of medication. I not even give Panadol, nothing whatsoever. I just give more, natural things until they have passed that development. So the first 3 months. But as she said, that it can be used in pregnant mothers. Of course, it's going to involve, we're not forcing anyone, and it's not like it's mandatory that pregnant mothers must get it. But as she said to you just last week or recently, there was a situation where a mother was quite sick with it. And and it is said, it is found that pregnant mothers are definitely at risk of having worsening of COVID-19 when they receive it. Another thing I want to emphasize is if a person is a first liner, like a pregnant nurse who is working in accident and emergency, or a pregnant radiographer who has to be close up on a patient, or a pregnant mother in ICU working as a worker, then I think that such a person should be encouraged to get the vaccine, because you're a first liner, and you, even without comorbidity, I think that mother, whether working or breastfeeding or something, should be more encouraged to get the vaccine. One last thing I want to just add, I know Dr. Graham had given a very morbid picture of the man in the river that got shot. I heard of a story, I don't know if it's on WhatsApp or where they got it, but one of my colleagues told me that a man once got the vaccine and he phoned the center. By the way, this is what it looked like. Let me just show you quickly. Savannah Hospital gave me this beautiful brochure when I finish, and it has a lot of information on it. I get a nice card also. I still went on to get the other one, and they have the numbers to call in case there's emergency. It's right here, and we have options, right? So what Dr. Graham says is true. So this man got the vaccine and he went home. On his way home, he had to stop the car and said that he's not seeing right. And he phoned back the center and said, boy, since he got the vaccine, he's just not seeing properly. And of course, the nurse asked him what's his name. And when she told him his name, she said, you need to come back for the glasses that you left on the table.
I'm sure you can use that one, Dr. Graham, in your next sensitization.
Oh yes. That's one sell-off.
Do you have a number that we can call, Dr. Graham, in the different areas? Is there a number when the seniors start rolling out, a number that we can call to register for the seniors?
Right, for the seniors, the minister and the permanent secretary have actually planned to do a hotline, and so that will be rolled out and communicated from Ministry of Health level. That will be done at national level. We had already had some persons would have called the health department, expressed their interest, but there is some challenge with that. Some persons are not getting through and all of that, and so it is taken, a decision was taken at national level that they will rethink it and do it in a way that is more transparent and equitable, and they will communicate that in due time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So everyone, just take a deep breath and relax. We have completed our evening session. I want to thank Holy Professor, the now Professor Trevor Ferguson, for his very knowledgeable presentation. I want to thank Dr. Marcia Graham. She feels like family, for her very graphic way in her description and presentation of the information on COVID-19, and my co-host, Bishop Dr. Evan Nepal, who was just so very gracious in working together with me to put this all together this afternoon. I think we had a really, really very informative and very productive evening. I want to remind persons that we have had several vaccines before, as Professor Ferguson has pointed out, for smallpox, for polio, measles, rubella, hepatitis B. We continue to immunize for these other infectious diseases, and we have added to the quota that we have, our COVID-19 vaccination. We're grateful that as a country, we were able to secure some of the vaccines. There are countries that have not received any doses as yet at all, because there's a rush globally to receive the vaccine at different levels, just to reboot the economy in countries. We want to acknowledge as well that the pandemic has affected every single walk of life, and we really, really hope to get back to our normal operations. For those of you who will take the vaccine, please inform yourselves, read as much as possible around the vaccine, and take an informed decision. For those of you who will not take the vaccine, we ask that you continue to practice all the non-pharmacological intervention, the social distancing, the sanitizations, the wearing of your mask, all those interventions. Please continue to do them if you have not made up your mind as yet. We still have a little way to go to receive vaccines for everyone, but for those who have already received, please also, if you have elderlies that you are in charge of, please make a very informative decision for your elderly relative so that they can also remain safe. I thank you all so much for coming this evening. I'm going to hand back over to the JPUA chair, Bishop Nunes. If you're still here, could you please take it away and wrap up right here? I think we've had a very long evening. There are still some questions in the chat. I suppose you will be able to speak to the JPUA about getting some more information from the experts that we have in Pentecost. Thank you very much. I'm Denise McFarlane, and it was a pleasure being with you this afternoon. Bishop Nunes?
Sister Denise,
yes.
I can just say something quickly.
Sure, go ahead.
I noticed some of the discussion, and it looks like you need to organize a part 2 for this.
I know, there are a lot of questions.
That it's not all or nothing. It's faith plus works.
Right.
The fruit of the Spirit is not joy or temperance. You can have one and the other. And so we are saying, we have always been promoting optimal health in terms of a balanced, healthy diet. Get yourself in physical shape so that you can decrease your risk of developing comorbidities. So I don't want persons to think that it's vaccine and vaccine alone. It is, as you said, the mask wearing, the hand sanitizing. It is doing all you can to take care of your body, which is the temple of the living God. So we are not here to say, drop everything else and we are putting all our hopes in the vaccine. No, we are saying that God has given us the wisdom. And as we get another tool to use, let us use it wisely. We have to embrace faith, but a living faith that is accompanied by work. We cannot say, oh, God will protect us, and you're going to walk in front of a truck speeding down the road and say, God now going to make truck bounce me, will give his angels charge over me to protect us. So some persons are really taking the stance that we are saying one or the other. I'm saying it's a combination method. The fruit of the spirit, sevenfold, get all 7 pegs of it. Don't just settle for joy, have your temperance, your long suffering. So I want to commend you, and you need to organize a part 2 because I have more questions.
Yes, Dr. Graham, just before you go as well, I'm going to plug this one in. I think I forgot it. I had it written down here. Persons are asking for if in the services that the church services, if you wipe the microphone and the pulpit after each speaker removes. Now, I know the virus stays in the air for a little while. We know it falls, but it can stay in the air, the smaller particles. But persons were asking if one person's finished speaking and the pulpit is wiped as well as the microphone, can you unmask and speak?
I do not recommend unmasking when you're in a public setting, because as you said, the virus will remain suspended. The wiping of the podium, is to prevent not droplet spread, but fomite spread. Because if you have a door handle, if it's a telephone at your workplace, if you don't wipe your high touch areas very frequently, someone can be there in the area wearing a mask, but they touch the counter and then they go back in the office, take off the mask, touch their eyes, touch their nose, and they can infect themselves that way. So again, it's not one or the other. It is mask plus sanitizing, because it is droplet spread, but you can also get spread from surfaces because it can fall and stay alive on surfaces. Persons touch it, and believe me, we touch our eyes, our mouth, or nose more often than we think without even thinking. And so it's not one or the other. As I said again, it's combination. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost combination, not one or the other. Bless you.
3 in 1. I had a young lady in church that fainted just recently. I see here in the chat the whole thing of hypoxia with the masking. Do you want to shed a little light on how we can manage that?
So I encourage persons to experiment with different types of masks, different material. Most persons find that what we call the medical mask or the surgical mask, the one that's white on the inside and it can be blue, pink, purple, other colors on the outside, that one is more breathable and most persons are comfortable using that mask. But we ask that persons experiment and find one that is more comfortable for them. We ask that you practice at home too, because as you wear the mask, you develop mask tolerance. We are born wearing masks. This is not new to us, but there are other cultures where, because of air pollution and high level of pollutants from factories and so on, that wearing a mask is a part of their culture. And when I got this WhatsApp and it was going viral at the onset about wearing the mask and you're going to faint and hypoxia, all of us are different. And so, as I said, with especially your congregation, if you have older persons, think about their mask tolerance level and don't stretch out the service too long. But I'm also saying to persons that we in the medical fraternity, whenever we are in the operating theater, it has been standard practice for the scrub nurse, the anesthetist, the surgeon, the medical student who is observing, for us to wear masks. We have had doctors who are doing brain surgery, transplant, heart surgery, that are in the operating theater for 6, 7, 8, or 9 hours. And you cannot take off your mask in this setting. So mask is new to the general population of Jamaica, but mask is not new to us in the medical fraternity, especially those of us who operate. And in some cultures, mask wearing is part of it because they have to protect themselves from outdoor air pollutants. So I'm saying that with practice, you will get better. We're not saying practice made perfect. We're not perfect, but practice will get us better. So experiment with different types of masks and practice and develop your mask tolerance, because different persons are different. We're all different, but we can all learn to find a mask that we tolerate so that we can make it a safe space for us to go shopping or in other settings. So it's not just about the church setting, but wherever you go, the tax office, the bank, please be safe, because we're in community spread and you can catch COVID-19 anywhere. So just be safe and use wisdom. Be safe. I wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's a wrap for today. Bishop Dr. Nepal, can you take it? I've not heard Dr. Nunes, Bishop Nunes on the call, or Bishop McGregor.
Yes, I'm very much here. Very much here.
There you go, sir. Thank you very much.
All right. God bless you. Thank you very much, Sister Denise. I'm sorry I got knocked out earlier and I was unable to do your official by your official introduction, but I know you'll understand. But I got back on time. I just want to say thanks to everyone, even that participated, and just to give you the official thanks from the Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic, I'll be handing over to our General Secretary, Missionary Yvonne Campbell. Thank you very much. Over to you, Sister Campbell. God bless you, and thank you very much. And I'm quite sure there'll be a part two. I'm quite sure there'll be a part two very, very soon. Very interesting.
Ditto, ditto, ditto.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Bishop Nunes. Jesus said, "You shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." Madam Facilitator Denise McFarlane, Moderator Dr. Evan Nepal, you will agree that Pilate is not the only one who sought to know what is truth. Amidst the myriad of conspiracy theories and perspectives on COVID-19 and the pandemic, the Jamaica Pentecostal Apostolic Movement, under the leadership of Canute Chambers, Major Chambers, his team, we have sought this evening to allay your fears, ladies and gentlemen, through this conference. We aim to bring you truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Our most able, eloquent, and charming facilitator, Ms. Denise McFarlane, moderator, Dr. Evan Nepal, presenters, Professor Trevor Ferguson, and Dr. Marcia Graham, apostles, bishops, leaders, Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic Board members, auxiliary members, all participants on this program. I greet you heartily. You will agree with me that this was a great health educational tour that we have been on for the past 2 hours. I would have asked you, if we were in one room, in one place, to give a rousing applause to our presenters and moderator and facilitator. Time would not allow us to unmute ourselves to do that, so I'll just do that for all of us. Facilitator Denise McFarlane, you most ably took us through the program. We will certainly leave here more knowledgeable based on Dr. Ferguson's role in speaking to the history of vaccination, the knowledge of effective eradication of other infectious disease like polio, rubella, the rigorous procedures in producing this or these vaccinations that we now have, the efficacy of the vaccines available to us in Jamaica, so we can approach this and make informed decisions with less skepticism. We note, though, that you warned us that currently there's no cure. Millions of persons have died and continue to die, and that the treatment is still limited. That was truth, and you have urged us to continue to do the necessary things that will cause us to be healthy. So you've told us to take all the necessary precautions. Dr. Marcia Graham approached her presentation from a practitioner's point of view, where she has told us about her experience with patients, with dealing with people at the community level. She's gone, I like her presentation. Every person on the platform could understand. We didn't hear any medical jargons, and we are grateful for that. What surprised me though, is that she said 80% of persons with COVID are asymptomatic. No, that means therefore that we cannot let down our guard. Doesn't matter how safe we feel, we still have to maintain the precautions that are put out by the Ministry of Health. And she has also guided us to their sites where we can get additional information and data on what is happening in Jamaica and the rest of the world. She's spoken to the credibility of the vaccine. She has told us what's happening exactly on the ground. And when you say it comes from the horse's mouth, no disrespect, she has had experience dealing with the side effects and with persons on the ground. Dr. Nepal is a credible witness. And he said he and his team have been vaccinated. I believe him. I know him for years, and I know he speaks the truth. So for me today, and for us, I hope, Professor Ferguson, Dr. Graham, Dr. Nepal have dispelled most of the myths and fears that haunt us. Dr. Nepal, who's also on the ground, has given his personal testimony. I am convinced that we have heard the truth today, ladies and gentlemen, the whole truth and nothing less than the truth. Therefore, we are not only educated, we are informed and we are encouraged that when our time comes around for the vaccination, we can go knowing that we have heard from the most credible sources. The JPUA, Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic, is pleased to have brought you to this forum to present to our people. We now know what to do. And I just want to say we have had over 800 persons on Zoom, not to mention the rest. So congratulations again to Jeremy McGregor and the team of JPUA members who have put this together. Again, we cannot thank our presenters more. I hear the call for part 2, and our most able chairman, vice chairman has echoed the call. And I know that if Major Chambers was muted, he would have echoed the call. So I'm saying to you, so say all of us. We have been blessed, we have been educated, we are much more knowledgeable. And we want to thank you, presenters. We want to thank you, participants, for coming. And we'll see you next time. Together for Christ as we proceed. God bless you all.
Madam Jemsek?
Yes, sir.
We're just thinking we'll confirm with Bishop Nepal. We could have part 2 in another 2 weeks' time.
Yes, most certainly, Bishop, most certainly. And I'm going to be honest with you, though, it wasn't so easy to get Dr. Marcia at Prof. So they are very, very busy people. As a matter of fact, you know, someone wants us to use them Tuesday night in Canada.
Okay.
Anybody coming? I mean, so it's not, that's what I'm saying, it's not really a TVJ stuff. This is now, I mean, what this presentation, no kidding, what Prof presented to us And the way in
Awesome.
which Dr. it is just awesome combination of facts and truth. And that's why I say this is not TVJ. Only no disrespect to TVJ, but this is even beyond that, you know. So we'll talk, but Dr. Graham is extremely busy, but you can feel her passion, you know.
Yes,
She's
Dr.
no
Graham.
family. She's no family.
So at
She's
least,
let's see,
at least we could say 2 weeks time, the last Sunday night in March, Sunday evening in March, 28th.
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
We'll see.
Thank you again on behalf of JPU.
I want to say a special thanks again to Sister Denise McFarlane. That was such an awesome job. God bless.
Yeah. Thank you. Bless you, everybody. The Lord bless you and keep you and make his face.
Those of you who are not members of the Jamaica Pentecostal Union Apostolic, we are still recruiting. This year, we want to recruit many more than we did last year. So we'll get the information to you through the same vein. And if you're a pastor out there, we want you to be involved. We wish we could have had these powerful presenters become members, but it's okay. We are happy that we have you as resource persons. But just in case, you can think about it. God bless you. Thank you, Minister Towsden and the technical team. And it's good night.